Hey all, I'm Carl, Simply RFiD. First feature I wanted to show you is the dashboard. So with the dashboard, you can take a look at your history of frames over time and kind of a visual, kind of Skittles view of what all of your inventory looks like, what's selling well, what's not. It's a nice visual representation, but really as you scroll through it, you're gonna find that what's more important, what's old and what's still on your board after a period of time. So for instance, here are frames that have been on there for 12 months and you haven't sold them. It's probably best to put something in there, replace it, and find a faster moving frame so that your customers have a more selection of things they want to buy. You can also see quickly what your best selling frames were for the last 60 days. And you can actually manage your board space by frame type. So for instance, if I have a deal where I always want to keep a certain number of Oakleys in stock, I can change that Oakley level to Oakley frames, and it'll tell me when I'm under my cap for Oakley frames, and I can order more frames to keep in stock. Here's an example. Oakley, I want to have 120 frames in stock, but I'm missing approximately, I've only got 5 currently. So maybe summer came, a lot of frames sold, and I haven't stayed on top of reorder process to get them back in stock again. More importantly, I can do something with RFID and AIMS that you could never do before, which is look at the velocity of a frame. The velocity is the number of days that frame was available to sell, or it was sitting on your board, and customers didn't buy or bought it. So for instance, here's a frame with a 0.05 velocity. That means that frame sat on the board for 20 days before someone bought it. If I scroll down this list, here's a frame with a 1 velocity. So this Charmant frame came in stock, it was available to sell for 1 day, and it sold immediately as soon as a customer came in. Boom, put it on the board, sold it out the door. Now, the quantity over here on this right side is the number of total sales is 1. It's a little difficult to really quantify one sale. So let's look at some ones that had some more volume to them. And if we scroll through this frame, here this particular frame had 2 sales, 0.13. That means that frame sells every 7 or 8 days. That's a pretty good mover. This Europa Côte d'Azur. Let's see what else has got some good volume with some good numbers. 0.14, 7 days to sell. Here's 3. So here, this Harley Davidson frame amazingly sells quite well. 3 frames sold, so they sell about every 5 days. That particular model was selling. So one of the cool things you can start doing is talk to your reps, talk to your, as they come in to talk to you and say, hey, listen, here's your best sellers, here's the worst sellers. Let me try and get some better sellers on the board so that people have a better selection. One of the problems you have now is that when customers come in, they're basically getting to look at what no one wanted, because as soon as you sell that frame, it comes off the board, you have to reorder it and get it back in again. So what's left is the stuff that wasn't selected. With one of the new features, or one of the greatest features of AIMS, is Dropship. What Dropship lets you do is order the frame, have it come straight from the manufacturer to the lab, and come to your office with frame and lens complete. That means when you sell the frame, you can put it back on your board, so it's available to sell 1, 2, 3, 4 times in 1 day. In fact, some frames get a velocity of 2, which means they're selling 2 frames per day of a particular model and type. Here's an example of a frame from Modern Optical. If I go ahead and hit the order button, where do I want to ship it to? I can bring it right to my store, or I could send it to one of these 4 vendors, labs, to have the lens placed into the frame as well. So let's say I pick Midland Optical. Reference number, I can put my patient's name in, Carl Brown, hit OK, and boom, automatically that order has been processed. It's going to go from the vendor to the lab, show up back at your store, everything's done. And the typical time to process an order is about 2 to 3 days. It goes from the manufacturer that same day at 4 p.m. It shows up to the lab the next day, and then 1 to 2 days in the lab back to your store. What's also cool in here is if I can go to my catalog and I want to find a new frame, let's say I'm looking for the new Reserva, and the 9298, that's a new one that just came out. Here it is, there's the model, there's all the information on it. I can hit the search button right here, and that'll let me do a quick Google search on it and see if there's any data on it. Okay, here's another cool thing you can do. Let's say, for instance, you get a notice that says decline, no stock. That means that frame's not available, it's out of stock, and I need to find something different. So I hit the replace button, and AIMS will pop up a message showing you other frames that are similar. So the same model's out of stock, but I can look for different models from Morel and see their similar designs and decide, hey, I want one of these instead. Or I can go to the whole catalog and start scrolling through and say, I'll take this one as a replacement for that particular Morel model, and I'll put that on my board instead. This allows you to keep on top of your board, make sure the frames that are going out are replaced by frames that are coming in, and you can stay on top of what's the best.